And what I found with men, and this doesn't really agree with what the DSM-4 and probably DSM-5 say, which is sort of the Bible of psychological and psychiatric diagnoses. But from my own personal experience and from my experience with men is that the word depression is a misnomer. It's wrongly labeled. So depression has typically been thought of as a sad mood that lasts a long time. The interesting part is that frequently, although not always, depression coexists or exists alongside anxiety. So you don't only have depression, you also have some sort of anxiety, which is a fearful mood. And then, interestingly, a component of both depression and anxiety in men in particular is irritability. Well, what's irritability? An angry mood. So I don't know if depression is the right word, but it seems that a lot of us men have an inability to manage these three major negative moods and emotions. And I think that's what's cutting us off at the knees a lot of times. So when you can, or as you learn to turn down the volume on these three major negative moods and emotions, your life is going to improve dramatically. All right, so just some more examples about mood. So as I said earlier, the goal is to learn to elevate your mood. So here's someone with, let's say, a normal mood cycle that kind of cycles throughout the day. And this is an example of someone with more frequent and more intense moods where they're going all the way up to 10 and all the way down to 1 or 0 here. So very moody individual, and they're cycling quickly. This would be a more pleasant person to hang out with because they're not hitting the extremes. What I found is at either end of this scale, the 0 or 1 end or the 10, 9 or 10, are both dangerous. This is obviously dangerous because you're getting down into areas of mood where you're predisposed to intense anger, intense fear, intense sadness. That makes sense, right? This is sort of suicidal down here. Up here is sort of mania or manic behavior. So when you get up to 9 or 10, you get really excited. You begin to feel indestructible. You begin to take extreme risks. People in a manic phase do things like buy 2 or 3 cars in a day that they can't afford. They will have sexual indiscretions. And so in my mind, the ideal mood is sort of in the middle range here, somewhere between like 4 and 7 or 4 and 8, where you've got more on the positive side than in the negative side. And again, this is what I find with a lot of people, that they've got a predominantly negative mood, and they kind of look like this guy here a lot of times. So most folks live like this, and this negative mood will lead to irritability, greater stress, greater health problems, poor relationships, and more. And one of the interesting statistics is that 90% of our anger is typically turned inward. So when we get angry, we just turn it in on ourselves and stuff it down, and that is not healthy nor the best way to deal with anger. And then this is based on a number of studies that have come along recently where the goal, again, this is the ideal mood that I talked about earlier, where you've got more time spent in the positive side of things, less time spent in the negative. And the goal for individuals is 3 times as much positive emotion as negative emotion. The goal for married couples is 4 to 1, so 4 times as much positive interactions, kind, loving, touching, compassionate acts, gracious interpretation of action as compared to put-downs, negative statements, stonewalling, and so forth. And then Marcial Losada came up with a 5 to 1 ratio for the top 10% of high-performing executive teams, where they've got 5 times as many positive interactions, open-ended questions, and other directed statements than the bottom 10%, which had more me statements where they were defending their own position, close-ended statements, and negative comments. So this is based on Barbara Fredrickson and Dr. Keltner at UC Berkeley. This is based on the work of John Gottman and his wife. And this is based on Marcial Losada's work. And then the final layer of affect is temperament. And this is the subtlest and broadest layer of affect. It's the biologically determined set point for your moods and emotions. It's your long-term emotional style. It is very subtle, and you may not even be aware of it. Temperament is played out over the course of your lifetime. Most people are born and die with the exact same temperament because they don't realize that they have the power to change it to their liking. Temperament is the emotional backdrop upon which your emotions and moods are painted. It's a broad brush, crude coloring of every thought, every perception you have. It's not attached to a specific object or person, and it's most often thought of as a glass half full or glass half empty outlook, the optimistic or pessimistic outlook. And you want to realize that your temperament can be changed just like your mood, just like your emotions. So be aware that there is the possibility of change there. All right, emotional control versus emotional management. We're not looking to control our emotions. It implies an either-or, all-or-nothing approach, an outlook which is not helpful or useful. We are looking for emotional management, which says that you look at each emotion as existing on a continuum or a scale, a 1 through 10 scale. So it's got different degrees to it. The idea is not to eliminate any emotions, but to become aware of each emotion as it comes over you so that you have a choice in how to deal with each one. And to me, emotional regulation is the most important competency, your best asset. It's the ability to guide your goal-directed activities over time across changing circumstances, including the management of your thoughts, your emotions, and your behaviors. And if you want to reach your potential, your peak performance, you'd better know how to use your mind to your advantage. And 95% of us just have no clue. And we're looking for baby steps of improvement. We're looking for little tiny steps in the right direction. All right, here's another tool that's quite powerful. It's the idea of judgment versus discernment, where judgment is simplistic thinking. It's yes, no, black, white. And discernment is advanced perception. It's thinking about any person, any trait, any situation, any problem as being on a 1 through 10 scale. So now when you think of yourself and traits you possess that you'd like to change, like assertiveness, for example, where do you stand on the assertiveness scale? Do you tend to be more courageous or more wimpy? So what I want you to do is think of progressing or of your learning in little tiny steps in the right direction. So if you can go from a 3 to a 4, that's a big deal. Pat yourself on the back. For example, think of your own ability to manage your emotions on a 1 through 10 scale. Where do you fall right now? Where did you fall 10 years ago? Think of your progress in little tiny steps. Advanced tools for the mind are not skills that you learn overnight. You're looking to make progress over time. Learning these skills is a process. It takes time. So you can think of nearly anything in life in terms of increasing or decreasing shades of gray. Anger, sobriety, relaxation, anxiety, shyness, depression, your physical weight, patience, physical fitness, presentation skills, and so on. Life is generally too complex to reduce to yes, no, right, wrong, all or nothing thinking. It's better to look at it as a spectrum.